where we speak all things women's cricket. It is the relaunch. We've been away for around about 6 months or so, but now we are starting back up on our own. There are no strings attached. We can do as many podcasts as we like. We are under no jurisdictions. It's just me and you, Lydia. And what a thrill it is to be back talking women's cricket with you.
It is, isn't it? We obviously talk a lot, and I think particularly now over the last sort of couple of years, I think obviously the reason why we do this is because we absolutely love it. We're cricket badgers, but there's just always something going on in the women's game that you feel we need to talk about. There's always something happening somewhere around the world. So it's great to be back with you, Daggers. Obviously, we've done a few games together now, haven't we? The summer is here. I say that loosely because the weather's been absolutely shocking, but at least we're sort of underway now, which is nice.
Yeah, it's absolutely lovely. And let's just sort of, for those of you who have not listened to the podcast before and are relatively new to women's cricket and you don't know who we are, I am Charles Dagnall, former bang average medium pace swing bowler for Leicestershire and Warwickshire, and have been broadcasting on the women's game for the last sort of 12, 13 years. Firstly with the BBC and with Sky Sports and around the world in a variety of different guises. Lydia Greenway, former World Cup winner. She doesn't need an introduction, I do. But former World T20 winner, former World Cup winner, England international, and broadcaster and coach of note as well. Mumbai Indians fielding coach and also broadcaster with Sky Sports. So that is us. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping as well. This podcast, because it is a relaunch, because we're doing it ourselves, it should be available to download wherever you get your podcasts from. So whatever platform, that should be available to you there. So things like Spotify and Amazon and Google and Apple Podcasts, all of those, it should be available to download. But we're also doing this on a video podcast or as a video podcast. So we have our own YouTube channel as well. So if you want to catch us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode, because you never know, we could be putting out tons of them. So you don't miss anything, with some great interviews. And we'll be really getting to the beating heart of women's cricket in a variety of different ways, from right at the top level to the bottom level as well. So lots of different subjects covered. If you click on Daggers and Lyds, and is written A-N-D, Lyds is written with a Y. So if you go to @Daggers and Lyds on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Do the same with your podcasts as well, and then you will never miss an episode of us. And why would anyone want to?
Lucky them. Did you rehearse that bit where you do hit the subscribe button?
No, where I've pointed, and for those of you listening on an audio podcast, where I've pointed, I have no idea if that is where the subscribe thing. It could be to my left or right. So wherever the subscribe button is, please hit it, and then you'll catch every episode of us. This is the other thing I was thinking as well. Before we talk cricket, this is our own podcast. Now, we were hugely grateful, weren't we, to Sky Sports for starting our Daggers and Lyds podcast in the first place. But now, because it's ours, there are no rules. There are no rules.
You can swear.
So we can swear if we want to, but the only slight problem is, and I know people do swear on their podcasts, but we're probably the least sweariest people in the world. If you were expecting a load of effing and jeffing, you're not going to get that from us, because we don't really. So what would be the strongest sort of word you would use on this podcast?
Well, we have spoken about this, haven't we? And I love words that feel good when you say them. So
yes.
Like plonker or twit, but the strongest one for me, which actually I do say, is bellend. And I also like it because on the socials you've got the emojis that you can use. So you've got the bell and the end that you can sort of put together. What about you?
That is way stronger than I thought you'd go.
No, actually, but it's one of those words, when you say it, it's like, yes, you feel really good about it.
I do get that. I was going to go with arse. That's as strong as arse. There is, I don't know if there's an emoji for that, but that was as strong as I was going. But knowing how far you've gone with Bell End, I think, and I'm sorry to those who may be younger listening, trust me, that's as strong as it genuinely will get on this podcast. So
maybe it hasn't got some sort of hidden meaning. Maybe I've said something that is really bad. But anyway, we can move swiftly on.
We'll gloss over it. We've got lots to cover, and I stress as well, Lids, that we are not just going to be covering the international game. We're going to be covering stories. We want your input as well. So get in touch with us. Any questions or comments or theories you want discussed, please get in touch. Any letters you want to write to us, or get in touch with us on social media at Lydia Greenway on X. I'll never get used to calling it X. But on Twitter, I'm Charles Dagnall, at Charles Dagnall. You can get involved with us on Insta or wherever you want to get in touch with us. Please do so. Comments in the section below under our YouTube videos, and we are only too happy to include you. And we want your input as well. So now we've gotten all of that underway, let's crack on.
Yes.
England have just finished their series with Pakistan. They won the T20 series by 3-0 pretty comfortably, 53 runs, 65 and 34 runs in the last T20 international. As for the one-day games, one of them was rained off, the second at Taunton, which was hugely frustrating. But they won the first one by 37 runs, and the last one, which was yesterday as we record at Chelmsford, by 178 runs. So I ask you, Lydia Greenway, overview on England's performance. They were expected to win. They've done just that. They've won 3-0 and 2-0, and I'm sure you can't say fairer than that. Let's look at the good parts from your perspective. What were you most pleased with from an England perspective?
Yeah, I think what I'm starting to see now from England, and I think I learned more about this more in the T20 series than I did the ODI series, was actually the structure and the depth of their side that they've now got. I think with all of this, you've already mentioned it, the caveat is they were never really pushed. But I think looking ahead to New Zealand and the World Cup, when I look at the lineup that they've got and the depth they now have with the bat and the ball, I'm actually quite excited. And the reason for that is I think Amy Jones has found a consistency that she's been searching for a long, long time. And then you have someone like Danny Gibson who came in that T20 series, and she just added a bit of not maybe X factor is I guess maybe putting too much on it, but actually she can score handy runs. The way that she scores her runs is exciting, and it puts pressure onto the bowlers, and she can also bowl a bit as well. So then you throw Alice Capsey into the mix, the flexibility they have to put her in the power play or drop her down if we're just coming out of the power play and haven't yet lost the wicket. So for that reason, I'm seeing more depth, but we haven't seen them be pushed. And I think heading into the ODI series, that's where, you know, we were obviously working on the games, and it did feel a little bit like we knew where the games were going to end up. I mean, disappointing thing, I know that you would have loved to have seen Lauren Filer play in that last ODI, obviously just to see what she could have done. But I don't think we learnt a huge amount from that ODI series. What were your thoughts on it?
I'm aligned with you on that, and it's what the depth is hugely encouraging for England, and I think they've got a problem, in a very good problem to have. Is that you mentioned about Danny Gibson, and you look at the three spinners with Glenn and Charlie Dean, and of course Sophie Eccleston. Those three, in my opinion, have to play in both T20 and 50-over formats. I think they're that good, and I think they work as a unit really, really well. Then you look at your other bowling options. Now, Nat Sciver-Brunt, really encouraging that she bowled yesterday for 5 overs. She said she felt a little bit sore afterwards, and she's managing this knee problem. But if she doesn't bowl, she still easily gets in as a batter. She's your best batter or one of the best batters in the world. But then that does give you a slight issue on the bowling front. So what you do have is, if Capsey plays or if Heather Knight plays, you have an extra spin option. So that's one thing. That's a good thing for England. But then do you look at a Danny Gibson as an extra seam option? Are you only going to play two seamers, or are you in Cross and Bell, or is Viola going to get the nod in that Viola is something different? She has got pace, and I think when you look ahead to Bangladesh, or I don't think she's probably going to feature in the T20 series, but in the one-day internationals, 50 over down the line,
Yeah.
I think, do you look for that bowler who can provide something different, that extra pace that can maybe go for a few runs but will take you wickets? So I think it's a good problem for England to have. Of course, positives, Nat getting another century, churning one out. But, that's expected. And I think the way that she did it, she looked very unflustered. She didn't give a chance. The way she plays spin is magnificent, either deep in the crease or coming out to meet the ball. Spinners do struggle with her, and I love watching her manipulate bowlers into space. And captains must tear their hair out when she bats. And I like I say, Sophie Eccleston, that's fabulous figure that she reached, the fastest ever to 100 one-day international wickets, just beating Catherine Fitzpatrick. So I think there's a lot to feel good about from an England perspective. I still think there are areas of concern. These are not massive worries, I don't think. But I look at international tournaments and think, what can make England? Australia are the benchmark. Yeah. So what do England have to do to try and overtake them? And that's what I think England have got to be thinking. We have got to, winning is great, and that's what they're expected to do, and they are doing that, and good on them. Excellent. Yeah. And I mean that with all sincerity, and that is really good for England and keeping a winning mentality and stuff. But the game yesterday at Chelmsford is what I expected. A hammering of Pakistan, and that was good. In the first one at Derby, I thought they were under par. That there were areas, and I think to a little extent at Chelmsford too. And what I mean by that is things like Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, India. They ain't dropping catches the way that Pakistan did. They're not going to give. They're not going to give you those chances. So I think that is something just to be a bit mindful of. I think, England in the field were generally good. Apart from Taunton, there was a couple of catches that went down. I say couple, 1.5 catches. I think Heather Knight's was a very difficult one at slip. But Sophie Eccleston should have easily been taken. One slight concern for me is up top in the power play. England in both games that were completed, and it's interesting, after 13.1 overs, in this England side, as aggressive as they want to be with the field up, they were 61 for 2 at Derby after 13.1 overs. That was when Tammy Beaumont was dismissed. And at Chelmsford, they were 70 for 3 after 13.1 overs before Wyatt and Silverbrunt overtook things. And I think that's an area they might want to look at, really. I know it's a new partnership with Beaumont and Bouchier. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there are some stats out there about, comparison to England and Australia and how they go about the different phases of the game. And England, they do look to go hard early on, and what that tends to result in is they lose wickets, and therefore when it comes to that middle phase, it makes it a little bit harder to sort of catch up. And then if you have lost wickets in that middle phase, you then can't go at as many as you would like in the back end. And when you compare it to how Australia do it, they actually do it slightly differently. They actually look to have more wickets in hand through that middle phase. They don't lose as many wickets in that middle phase, which is a big, big plus, because then when they get to the back end in that last 10 overs, they have a lot more license. So that's when you see, for me, a good direct comparison is Alex Capsian and Ash Gardner. In a 50 over match, ideally, those two players are very, very similar. They're ball strikers. Capsey needs to work on the rotation element of her game, which she could have to play a role in those middle overs. And that'll be a big area for me where I think she needs to work on. But ideally, players like Capsey and Gardner, you want them coming in at, what do you reckon, 35 overs plus at least? But then if they're coming in too early, then that's where I think they get stuck. I have got the figures somewhere which I can try and dig out, but it was actually really obvious in terms of how England and Australia went about their business. And yeah, actually, I have got it here. So in the middle overs, Australia in their last 16 games have only lost 42 wickets, whereas England in their middle overs have lost 76 wickets, and that's in 15 games. So that then allows England to go at 6.2 and over in the last 10, and Australia go at 7.9 and over in the last 10. And that's because they've got wickets in hand. And it's a little bit similar with ball in hand as well. Australia generally pick up more wickets in the middle overs. So they've picked up 100 wickets in the last 17 games. And then England, 83 wickets in the last 16 games. So yeah, I think you're right. Just trying to get that balance. Just reeled off a lot of stats there. So
that's perfect. You're well within your rights. It's your podcast. You can do what you like. Yeah, I think England, the rotation of strike at the top of the order was something that I think was a little bit lacking, and also a little bit of timidity when, if that's a word, I'm not sure it is, but they were a little bit timid. I'm going with it. When they went to, Maya Bouchier went out to hit the ball, and I know that's her role and what but it wasn't that full commitment to the shot, which I kind of expected, almost like they were a bit nervous about going about it. But that was just from watching from the sidelines. I just think that's an area that England might look to work on. Before we hear from Heather Knight, because I caught up with Heather at the back end of yesterday's game, on the third one-day international. You're right. I was a little annoyed annoyed. It's only because I want to see something different. I think England played a very strong side, and which they are well within their rights to, and they can play who they want. But I'm thinking moving forward, what are they going to learn from Lauren Filer sitting on the sidelines? She's hardly played any cricket. I've looked at I've got the stats in front of me. I'm going to reel some off now. This year, in 2024, she's played 9 games of cricket. 9. She's played for 9 days. And some of them are 2020, some of them are 50 over games. How is this girl going to improve if she is not playing cricket? And she could be such a weapon, but you're always going to err on the side of caution if she's not got that experience behind her, both either at domestic level or at international level. If she's in the squad against Pakistan, play her. You know about Kate Cross. She's one of the best in the world. She gives you that control, brilliant in the middle overs. You know about Lauren Bell, who's come on so much in the last 12 to 18 months. And I know Lauren Bell, after messages from the England coaching staff, is working on a few things. And that's good. They're trying to change certain aspects but again, one could argue, should they be doing that in international cricket? Should that not be being done in domestic cricket if you're working on technical aspects? Now, Heather will say, and you'll hear from her, that she had a little bit of a niggle at the start of the season. I understand that. But, these are elements that should be, I think, taken into consideration. What are we going to learn? If ever there was a time to take a look at a bowler, Pakistan is surely the time to do it, is it not?
Yeah, I think so. And it felt a bit like the selection decisions were already made for the games in the ODI series. And it was really unfortunate that the rain obviously took the game in Taunton, which meant that Filer only bowled a handful of overs. To me, that was the case. I think there's a case to be put forward to say, right, we know that we originally thought Filer wasn't going to play, or we didn't want her to play because we wanted Bell and Cross to play, but actually let's just give her a go. So yeah, I'm on board with you on that one, Daggers. And by the way, I thought she bowled brilliantly at Taunton. I was genuinely excited. Oh, over 70 miles an hour consistently, quickest bowler on show, and control. That was one thing that I know she's been working on. So, yeah, be interesting to see. I know you obviously spoke to Heather yesterday, so it'd be good to get her thoughts on it.
Well, actually, let's hear from Heather then. I caught up with the England captain at the conclusion of that third one-day international.
Captain, thanks for joining us, Heather. Over the course of this series, what do you reckon? Are you pleased with your work?
Certainly pleased with today. I think the performance we put in today was really pleasing. And I think across both formats, I think the pleasing thing is we've had lots of contributions for everyone. I think in that T20 series in particular, obviously with the T20 World Cup in the horizon, I think we've won in different ways, and I think each three batting innings were very different, like being 11 for 4 and then still punching out 160. We had one player go hot in the last game, and then the middle game we sort of scrapped out a score on a slightly slower wicket. So I think the development in terms of adapting to conditions, particularly in that T20 series, was one of the things I think we'll take away from this trip.
I suppose it's like really weird in that there is obviously the T20 World Cup, and I'm sure that's absorbing the majority of your thoughts because it's in October and it's just round the corner and you've got to galvanise your side and think about that. But obviously soon after is the 50 over World Cup a year on, and so it must be very difficult to try and sort of cope with the different formats with a slightly longer term view, or is it?
I think there's a big competition every year. There's an Ashes or there's a World Cup, and it seems like you're always looking towards the next tournament. And I think what we've tried to focus a lot on this summer is keep improving as a group, and I think that's been really key for us. Not focusing too much on T20 World Cup, although obviously we're aiming to peak then, or the 50 over stuff. Just keep getting better as a group, keep getting better as individuals in terms of your skill level, and have the tools in your locker as a player to play in the conditions we're going to face. Obviously Bangladesh is going to be slightly different. We might get a lot of spin, a lot of slow wickets, not much bounce, so making sure as a player you've got the tools in your locker to be able to do that.
Is that difficult though? Because obviously you want to try and keep the squad fresh, and you want to see what other players have got, those who are performing in domestic cricket or whatever, if you want to blood any players, but obviously there is a competition around the corner, so that must be quite difficult to try and sort of navigate your way through getting the squads you want to develop, but also the squad you need to go and win that particular tournament or try and win it.
Yeah, 100%, and I think the depth is really growing in the group as well, so finding times to give opportunity when you're building towards a competition can be quite tough. Like Lauren Filer was unlucky to miss out today. I think she was really exciting to watch bowl the other day, albeit for only a short period with the rain, but I think the girls are taking their opportunities, and I think what you got to do is try and focus on the here and now and try and win, but you've also got to have a little eye on the future, and that's a little bit John's job as well, around sort of looking more towards the future. My job's a little bit more in the moment to keep us winning and keep us performing, but it's sometimes hard. There's so much cricket as well, like you don't have a huge amount of time to go away and work at your game, so sometimes you've got to do it in competition and in international cricket, which is not easy. And there's Lauren Bell's a great example, the things she's doing with her action to try and be able to move the ball both ways and be a little bit more consistent, and she's doing that in matches, which is pretty cool and pretty brave, I think, to be able to do that. So
I get that, and I do, and I'm not going to lie, I was stamping my feet the fact that Lauren Filer wasn't playing again, because and it's not in a bad way, it's a sort of, we want to see what she can do, and I know that's a difficult thing for you, and I understand that. One of the other things I stamp my feet about a little bit is about domestic cricket and how much your side are playing some of the domestic cricket. You know, Lauren Bell hasn't played any Rachel Hayhoe-Flint this year. Alice Capsey's not played any Rachel Hayhoe-Flint. So is it, it's one of these where I'm thinking, well, if you're trying things, or if you're out of form, or if you're not quite seeing it right, surely domestic cricket's the way to. Do you want to see?
Yeah, there's people managing things all the time that people don't know about. Like Lauren had a little back injury, a little niggle that she needed to get right before she played cricket. So that's the reason she didn't play. And there's always individual reasons, and it'll be on an individual basis based on what that player needs and what they feel they need to develop and also be ready for international series. And like looking at the calendar ahead, it's really busy as well. And I think sometimes as players you need to find little gaps, and I think we're learning as players to do that better, because you front load your summer and play every game, you play every domestic game, you play loads, and then suddenly you get to a period when there's loads of cricket and you find out you're a bit tired and a bit drained. And I know it sounds a bit mad because like we love what we do, but I think that is an area you need to be conscious of a little bit as a player, and that's different for different people, of course. And like, I've been really conscious that I want to find little periods where I can just have a little bit of time away from cricket and make sure I'm fresh when I really need to be.
Absolutely, good on you for answering it. And it's only because from what we see, and we're not in the dressing room, so we can only sort of comment on what we see in front of us. But it has been obviously a very good start to the summer. You got New Zealand coming up, 3 one-day internationals, 5 T20s. Obviously, the focus then shifts to T20 cricket a little bit. Are you pretty much there on finding out what the 11 you're probably going to start with the World Cup, or is there 1 or 2 places that you think need ironing out?
Yeah, I think we're pretty close. I think there's probably a couple of places, a couple of spots, but I think we're very close, and we're pretty close to knowing what our best squad is, and having different options if we need it in our squad to face different conditions, and having that kind of real rounded squad. I think that's important. Probably less so in the T20 World Cup, that happens quite quickly, but I think having those options and people ready if there are injuries, I think is a really key thing, and thinking about different situations that might arise that mean you might have to use other players, and knowing those players are ready to come in is important. But we're not too far away, and obviously those five T20s are going to be a nice build into that World Cup.
Good on you. Welcome back to the Daggers and Lyds podcast. What do you think of our tech? Do you like this?
High tech.
It is high tech.
It feels very small.
Do you need a stick? Do you feel I need to get some sticks so you can have it?
I think you need a bigger mic.
Bigger mic.
Bigger mic.
I'm not going to get one. Thanks so much for your time.
Cheers. Thanks, Daggers.
Heather Knight there having a go at my equipment that I bought. I bought this fantastic, microphone setup and all of that. I have to agree. For those of you who haven't seen the equipment because you're listening to this as an audio podcast, I've got one of these little clip mic things, but it doesn't sound great when they're clipped on. So you've got to hold it in front of you, and it's only a couple of inches long. So I do need to get some kind of stick to make it look like a proper microphone because it's a bit crap.
There we go. First swear word. First swear word.
Is that a swear?
Oh, I think it's a swear word. I wouldn't say that in front of children. I don't know about you, but by the way, Daggers, those microphones are fine. There's nothing. It's not about a fashion show, is it? I think they're absolutely.
No, I'm defending my equipment.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, 100%. Right. What do you make of what Heather said there? There was a little bit on these domestic players. I don't know if there's a sort of defensive nature to, some of the things that are said in the media from the England team. They have a job to do, the coaches, the captain and the England team, and so do we. And I'm talking about the royal we, everybody in the media who has an opinion on what they see. We all have our jobs to do. I do look at the element of domestic cricket. The setup has been put in place in such a way that, you should be selected from the performances that you put in the Rachel Hayhoe-Flint Trophy, the Charlotte Edwards Cup, and either, like in the men's game, if you're struggling for a little bit of form or if you need to work on a few things, you go back to county cricket and that's where your bread and butter is. I'm looking at some of the workloads of some of the England team, and it surprises me and it frustrates me to a certain degree. I don't understand how, let's take Alice Capsey for a moment. She has not played in the Rachel Hayhoe-Flint Trophy this year. Now, this is a girl who averages 16 in 50 over cricket and is in international games. Why is she not playing in the Rachel Hayhoe-Flint Trophy? When you're with England, I understand that you can't play in domestic cricket, but in the build-up, what's she been doing post WPL? I know she played in 20 over. There's surely things. She's not the finished article yet. And this is, I'm not picking on Alice at all. I'm talking about any player. I think it's slightly different if you're Nat Silverbrunt, where you are a world-class elite talent and you've got a billion stats to back yourself up with. And your body's sort of a little bit, on the skew now and again. So you've got to wrap her in cotton wool a little bit. But you know your game by 30 years old. Think if you're 20, 21, 22 years old. And I also ask you, what does this say to those who are playing in domestic cricket when some of the England players are not playing, when theoretically I think they should be? I think it's a fair comment or a fair question to ask.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you, Daggers. I think this has been my one bugbear, and I think you and I are probably two of the biggest supporters of England women's cricket and how well they do. But the one thing I cannot get on board with is this narrative of when they didn't perform well against Pakistan, the narrative that was fed to us about the players making technical changes as they go. Like, first of all, as a player, you're always making changes to your game. That is just a given. And secondly, if they're big changes, I understand for bowlers, technical changes takes a lot more work compared to batters. I do understand that. But if you want your bowlers to be making technical changes, then don't put them in the spotlight of international cricket whilst we're doing it. You only have to look at Izzy Wong and what happened with her last summer. So that's the one thing I would say. I think the other thing regarding domestic cricket is my worry about, firstly, perhaps I'd love to know how the England players feel about playing domestic cricket, because having been over in Australia, I've been over there and played myself, but more recently as a coach, I've seen firsthand how competitive the WBBL is and the WNCL is. And the reason why that is so competitive is because the Australian players want to play in that competition. There is no way that Alyssa Healy, when she sees New South Wales against Victoria, like the biggest rivalry in state cricket, there is no way she's going to say, I'm going to sit this one out. Or Elise Perry's going to say, I'm going to sit this one out. If they can play, they haven't got injuries, they are playing. And that is what makes their competition so good. The ECB aren't investing all this money in for just the domestic players to play in it. It needs to be good enough for our England players to go and play in it, and also help our domestic players get better too, because that combination is vital. You can't just have England players not playing in it. So I think there's an opportunity for some of them now to go back and play in the Charlotte Edwards Cup, and it may well be that we will see lots of England players' names playing in that, and that's great. And maybe this rant isn't necessary, but just from a long-term point of view, I think England have to get it right. They have to be encouraging that mentality and that culture of England players wanting to go back and play for their regionals or county sides.
I don't know, and we will find out. We'll get one of the England coaches. We're hoping that we'll get Matt Mason on at some point, or John Lewis, or one of the members of the coaching staff, to sort of discuss this, because I think it needs discussing. But I don't know whether they're given the choice.
And that's something we don't know. Yeah.
I don't know whether they're given the choice, or whether they're told that they've got to have the time off and not play, or if, I as a coach, or when I was playing, your coach told you whether you're playing or not, and you wanted to play. That was the other thing. And you mentioned about Australia. Elise Perry, she's available to play. She goes and plays. She wants to go and play. She wants to play. They play a lot more domestic cricket, do the international players, than perhaps the England players do here. And this is across the board. I know, like someone like Kate Cross, she's played 4 games in the Rachel Hayhoe Flint Trophy already, and sort of leads the way from the England players. But I think, and if I'm an England player, first off, you're a professional. It's your job. It's part of your job to go and play domestic cricket if you are fit and available for that. I don't buy into necessarily the workloads argument. So far there's been 150 days this year, and Lauren Filer's played 9 of them. I know there's a lot of cricket still to come, and you don't want to knacker players out and all of that, and there is a balance to be made, and something that Heather was saying, and I get that point. I really do get that point, where you don't want to front load players, but you're professional athletes as well. And I think you should be fit enough to be able to play in a variety of different competitions. It's not like they're churning out 4-day games every week, and then there's a Sunday league or whatever it is. It's these are short, sharp games.
Yeah.
And the third thing is, I think if you're an England player and you go back to domestic cricket, dominate. Show why you're an England player. Go out and score massive centuries, or go and take fifers, and show what the standard is to be an England player. And I think that will be fantastic for the tournament, for domestic competitions. We will get to find out what the situation is, but I think it's something that needs to be talked about, and maybe there are things that we don't know that
absolutely.
have other bearings on what goes on. So we've got to sort of hold our hands up and say, until we find that out. But it's what we see from the outside. I would love to see now the majority of those England players go and be available for Charlotte Edwards Cup cricket if there are matches on. So we shall wait and see how that pans out. We will try and get to the bottom of it, and maybe it's a debate that cannot be sort of finished. It can, an agree to disagree type of situation. Anyway, we'll get more of that. But England, comfortable victors. They have New Zealand coming up next in 3 ODIs and 5 one-day internationals. We will preview those at a later date because we can do as many podcasts as we like. So we can do lots on lots of preview on New Zealand to come. Now, what about Pakistan? Well, we're going to talk about them in a minute, but firstly, let's hear from one of our broadcast colleagues who was such great fun to be around. What a real fillip she's been in the commentary box with her knowledge and her humour and fabulous company. Urooj Mumtaz Khan. I spoke to her after the 3rd one-day international and asked about what she thought about Pakistan.
Welcome to the Daggers and Lyds podcast. Before we go into a conversation, thank you so much for your time, but sum that up for Pakistan, that whole series, if you will.
Yeah, Daggers, firstly, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. For Pakistan, probably not so much in terms of it was always going to be an opportunity, what they can get better, what they can learn on, and what went wrong in Bangladesh versus Bangladesh, New Zealand and West Indies, right? That's basically where you're coming from, wanting to improve on why Pakistan lost 3-0 against West Indies at home, and that's the big one. Results wise, you were never expecting Pakistan, again, no disrespect to the side, but you weren't expecting Pakistan to turn England over. It's about what they could do better, and bits and pieces of glimmer of hope in terms of their bowling, which is always their stronger suit, and I thought the T20 game was a reflection of that, but it was again a lack of probably thinking on your feet from terms of a leadership skill. Now I say that again, and I understand where I'm coming from, because Nidadar probably under the captaincy lid for a very short time now, but has played the game for over 15 years, and that is that. Just in terms of cricketing smarts, I felt that there were a lot of captaincy decisions which probably also were a result of the results that have come around. But in terms of batting, it's the one so that Pakistan really need to work on. How to play spin, how hard they can hit the ball, element of strength and fitness comes with that. And today, 29.1 overs to get wrapped out is a reflection of how far behind they are in terms of with the bat.
Couple of real positives though. I thought Urooj Mumtaz, the off spinner, is a fabulous prospect, really nicely bowled, couple of 2 for 40s in the game at Derby and here. Fatima Sana, a bit of pace today, 71 miles an hour there. Now these are the things that the coaching staff and the PCB have got to look on and say, you know what, there's something there, we can do something with these players.
There's more than something. Sidra Amin, I felt obviously sort of fell off the boil with the bat, a very good striker off the ball. Muniba Ali, again today, 47 today, maybe one strike too many. She looked very good, very good. Left-handers, elegant, strong square on the offside and the leg side, and isn't afraid to dance down the track. Alia Riaz as well, bits of 30s and 40s in that middle order, full face of the bat, using her feet to Sophie Eccleston and Charlie Dean both. And then Fatma Sana, I just said this, I see a future Pakistan leader in that girl. Very
smart.
Well
at the end, I had a chat with her at the press and I thought she spoke brilliantly and just like head screwed on, knows her game. Sadly, I thought she was sort of oddly used in that last game, but when you need a wicket, that's kind of the type of bowler that Pakistan need to turn to.
Absolutely.
So there's plenty there.
And Sadia Iqbal, don't forget, she's a bit of a niggle with her knee. She's had that problem, but again, throughout the T20 series, exceptionally well. Tall girl, gets a little bit of bounce and turn and bowls with certain pace as well. So, Hani, I earmarked her a while back, repeatable action, tall girl again gets the ball some revs and bowls in that consistent channel offside or just that corridor. And so there's plenty of Pakistan that they can work with, plenty of positives that have come out of this. It's just about stitching one good performance together.
What you can't see on this interview, by the way, is Mark Butcher, the other side of this camera, who's pointing at his watch saying he wants to take you. What are you taking, Urooj home? Last question, and we thank you for joining on the podcast, is that it looks as though qualification now, you're going to have to go through a separate qualifier for the 50 over World Cup. You're still relatively confident that that's where Pakistan will be in India in the 50 over World Cup next year?
You'd imagine they'll eventually make it. But it's a shame. It's a real shame given Pakistan that they will miss out on automatic qualification. Now, I say this because West Indies still have 9 games left. Sri Lanka still have 6 games left. And either of those sides win 2 out of their respective games and they sort of slip Pakistan down into qualification. It's not where Pakistan want to be. Pakistan want to be that team consistently ranked 5, 6, 7 in that middle, who occasionally give a hiccup or a sort of slip up to the top ranked sides, but are true contenders with the likes of West Indies, South Africa, New Zealand. Unfortunately, just off late, Pakistan have fallen well behind, and hence why might see themselves in qualification.
Congratulations on becoming the new Pakistan reporter for the Daggers and Lyds podcast, but she can go now. She can go now. She is off. Thank you, Urooj.
Cheers. Thanks very much, Daggers.
Urooj, or Roojie, as we've got to know her. Rouge, she's been brilliant company, hasn't she?
Yeah, lots of energy, and she obviously clearly knows about the women's game in Pakistan. But it's also really good to get an insight into their domestic structure back home. Obviously, they are nowhere near as resourced as England are with their domestic structure, and you have to feel for the international players, don't you? Because you see some talented players like Ruji mentioned, Fatima Sana, obviously still really young, hugely talented, and you just wonder, okay, she's going back to Pakistan now. What cricket is she going back to? And it's a shame because we obviously have to judge them on what we see in these ODI crickets, but in these ODI matches. But I would just love to see more support for them. But yeah, you can see they've got players to work with. There's no doubt about that.
There really is some talent, and I looked at Umi Hani, the off spinner,
yes,
and I really think she's a good bowler. And it's about taking those young players and really nurturing them and putting them in a position to succeed. And I go back to the time a couple of years back, and I remember Wasim Khan was the chief executive officer there, and Ramesh Raja was the head of the cricket board. And they were going to start the women's PSL. They were going to start a women. And what would that do? Yes, they'd struggle. The standard isn't where it needs to be, but something to galvanise the women's cricket in that country. They play a T20 tournament, 10 games, there's 6 sides. They play it in 2 weeks in January. They play a 50 over tournament, which is a month in, I think, April and May. And that's it. Now, there's a universities tournament that has just been started up. And again, it's a slow progress, and more resources have been put into women's cricket. But I echo what you say, not nearly in the same ballpark as what England, India and Australia have. And no other board is like that. It really is the case of the haves and the have-nots. They do what they can with what they've got. But I heard there was 2 new PSL teams that are going to be started up. And I'm like, well, okay, I understand that. The PSL is a big sell for them. It makes them a good amount of money. But wouldn't it be nice to get maybe a 4-team women's PSL started up? If you don't have the depth of player there, okay, then you can adjust accordingly for the amount of teams and start it off slowly. Maybe you put the Karachi Kings and the Multan Sultans and Islamabad United, and you do those 3 teams first and align them and start to build from there and garner the interest. But I do feel for Pakistan because they're pretty much getting pumped against everybody that they're playing. West Indies came over to Pakistan and they got hammered. They won 1 game in New Zealand in a super over, which is a great win for them, but no chance against England. It looks as though they're going to have to qualify. for the 50
Yeah.
over World Cup, and we will see them in the T20 World Cup. But it was nice to see them. First time we've seen them properly in a series here since 2016, and we keep our fingers crossed that their progression remains on an upward curve. We do have other things to cover in depth, which we will do in separate podcasts. Things like the World T20 previewing. We will do. The groups have been sorted. We'll be talking about Tier 1 status or the tier status and the alignment with the counties. We've got a whole separate podcast in the future going to be dedicated to that. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. We're going to celebrate club cricket as well, and loads of other topics. And if you have topics, please do suggest them to us, or guests that you would like to see, or things that you would like us to cover, questions that you have, please let us know. We love feedback, only nice feedback, of course. Anyone wants to slag us off, we just have
Our skin isn't that thick, Daggers.
No, it's not
nice
thick
feedback
at all.
only.
I've got a message here saying that they disagree with me. Yeah. So we've got all of that to come, and this is the beauty. We can do emergency podcasts. We can do pretty much anything whenever we want, as we want. Just for now, the Rachel Hayhoe Flint Trophy is 4 games in. That has been stopped for the moment because the schedule now kicks us into the Charlotte Edwards Cup. Always a fun time of year. Yeah. What have you got for us on that front, Lyd?
Well, we're going to do a bit of a roundup, I think, of it all, just to sort of give everyone an idea of who's looking strong, maybe who's struggling. We've had some recent games that have just been finished. So that was over the bank holiday weekend, Monday the 27th and Sunday the 26th. But what I wanted to start with, Daggers, and actually get your opinion on, is the news of Izzy Wong. So she has obviously left the Central Sparks on loan to go and join the Western Storm for the duration of the Charlotte Edwards Cup. And it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because not long ago she was dominating with Mumbai Indians. She was playing international cricket, and now she's in a position where we can only assume she wasn't going to get picked in that Central Spark starting 11. The other news embedded in that, which we can maybe come back to, is from the cricketer who also believe that Lloyd Tennant has left his role as head coach at Central Sparks as well. So we'll have to get confirmation from that, because that was just sort of, we believe, sort of quote. But let's go back to Izzy Wong. Thoughts on that?
Izzy Wong was the poster child of England cricket. Post the South Africa series, where she sort of made her debuts and very, very swiftly indeed, and then went and had that first WPL where she performed so admirably for the Mumbai Indians, you guys winning in the first competition last year. And then things seemed to fall apart, and she lost her run up a little bit. Confidence starts to ebb away, and that can happen with a young bowler. Of course it can. Again, there's been processes in place to get her back. I thought England didn't treat her very well at all by playing her in one of the T20s against Sri Lanka. She wasn't ready. You could see it. She wasn't, and she, and it's on national television, and you could see it, and the pain I was feeling actually for her as a bowler, just sort of like you want a hole to go and swallow you up. So there's been a progression from there to where we saw her last in the WPL, and I thought she looked better. A lot better. So the work that she had been doing with the coaches had obviously, paid dividends. And I thought she wasn't as bowling as quickly as she normally does, but I thought she looked a lot more smooth. The ball was coming out of the hand nicely, and that was all good. I think there's a good thing and a bad thing from Izzy Wong's perspective and from cricket's perspective. I think the bad thing is she's obviously not progressed at the rate that people would have hoped her to have done, and her not being selected for the Central Sparks is probably on performance. So she's, struggling on that perspective. What I do like is they've sent her alone, and she's going to get more cricket. And this is not high-profile cricket, if you like, and I mean that in its best possible way. It's not televised all the way. She can go away if things are, and keep working on her game and keep having the opportunity to play. So I like the loan system. I think it should be used a lot more in the men's game, actually. And I think if players are struggling or need a change of scenery or just something different, but as long as they're playing cricket, I think that's a really good thing. So good on the Central Sparks and the Western Storm in a way. And what we all want Izzy Wong to be back bowling the way that we know she can. But so that's kind of where I feel with it at the moment. I'm really glad she's playing. I hope we get to see her in a return in the way that we know she's capable, but it looks as though that's going to be a little bit of time yet.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it goes well for her, and she's, as you say, just having the opportunity to play more cricket is fundamentally what she needs, because she has got that X factor. You know, I've been lucky to see her with the Mumbai Indians.
How was she with you during the WPL? I mean, what did you notice? Did you see a discernible change from the previous year where she struggled?
Yeah, massively. She's got her run up sorted now. That was sort of the big thing. She just couldn't quite get the rhythm in her run up. Obviously, she didn't get the game time that she had in the previous WPL because we'd signed Shabnim Ismail. So obviously, someone like Shabs she's pretty hard to leave out of any side. So she came in and Izzy was watching a lot of the games. But you know, from a coaching point of view, all you want from your players is someone who will be a good team player, will show a brilliant attitude and works hard. And Izzy Wong has all of that. She's obviously got the excitement of her batting as well. I think she can do some damage there. So, you know, I don't think she should be written off at all. I think she's still young and she's still got plenty of things that she can get better at. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw her come back strongly. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Anyway,
yeah, absolutely, and we're working all
right.
Go on,
quick wrap up then of the Charlotte Edwards Cup where we're at now. So every team has played 3 games. I'll whiz through the table quickly. So Central Sparks are top. They've won 3 from 3, as have the Blaze. There's 1 point in it between those two sides. Central Sparks also have a good net run rate, so their net run rate is up at 1.5, whereas the Blaze is 0.2. So they're looking strong. Middle of the table, you've got Southeast Stars, who have got 2 wins from 3. And then you have Thunder and Southern Vipers, who have 1 win each. And then at the bottom, you've got the Sunrisers, who got their first win, actually. 2021, most recently. They had a brilliant win against the Southern Vipers. And then bottom of the table, Northern Diamonds have not yet been able to get any points under their belt. So they'll obviously be keen to try and secure their first win. There are games going on today, actually, as we record, which is the 30th of May. So the Vipers against Storm and Central Sparks against Thunder. But what do you make of those standings, Daggers? Obviously, Southern Vipers you'd expect would be up there, but they're sort of currently 5th and they've only got one win under their belt. And obviously Central Sparks are playing some good cricket too.
They are playing some good cricket, it would seem. The one surprise is the Northern Diamonds for me. But the other thing which I love about the Charlotte Edwards Cup is that you have got time to turn it round. 14 games in your Charlotte Edwards Cup. So if you do start badly, you can recover, or you can work on different different processes for your side if you want to change the order, or if you want to bring in certain players, or just get a bit of team unison. You've got time to do that, and that's what I love about the Charlotte Edwards Cup. And so you can have a bit of a roller coaster ride of a group season. So of course you'd love to start fast, as the Central Sparks have done, but there is a lot of cricket to play. I'll be keeping an eye as well on those who are trying to make a potential late burst for T20 international selection for the World Cup. They've got this period now in the Charlotte Edwards Cup. They've also got the 100, and for any player who might be on the fringes or may be hopeful of getting selection for that T20 World Cup in October, then now's the time to put your foot down. So early start at the moment. It's early season, but plenty more cricket to play, and let's keep an eye on who does well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose just a few name checks of the most recent games that have happened. Already mentioned Central Sparks beat the Northern Diamonds by 3 wickets. That was actually a reduced game. So that was, I think it was down to 8 overs. The Central Sparks chased down 80 in those 11 overs. For the Sparks, it was Eve Jones, the skipper, 26 off 18. And then with ball in hand, Emily Arlott, 2 for 10. Grace Potts, keep an eye on her, 3 for 15. And Georgia Davis, 3 for 23. Northern Diamonds, only real sort of performances to note. Erin Burns, the Australian, who's obviously overplaying domestically this year, 30 off 18 and 2 for 22. At Beckenham, they couldn't get the game. Well, they started the game. Obviously, South East Stars against the Western Storm. Western Storm had batted for 6 overs. They were 38 for 3, but then the rain came down. So we all know what that's like, but it's always the way, isn't it, with our English summer?
Yeah, absolutely. And just over the last 2 minutes or so, I wonder if our listeners, dear listeners or viewers on YouTube, can tell who has to edit this podcast. As Lydia continued, we were supposed to do like 40 minutes. That was going to be our part. We're at 45. We've just ticked over 45, and we were supposed to do 40 minutes with the interviews as well. And I'm sort of going to be putting this together. And it tickles me that we can never stick to time.
I know.
When we start talking about the women's game, we love it so much when we do. That we've got extra bits to put in and stuff like that, but it was just tickling me as you were going down. I thought you were going to go through each individual score, and I'm thinking, Lids, I've got to edit this.
This was my job today. I thought I'm going to have to do it properly. The people want to know. We need to give what the people want. So shall I finish off my roundup?
Oh yes, finish it off, please do. No, please do finish it off. Be thorough.
Well, I've got 2 more to finish off. Arundel, we saw the Sunrisers. That was the exciting one. They got their first win since 2025. They beat the Vipers, who fell 3 runs short in their run chase. I'm not going to go through all the players there, but we've got time. And then on Monday the 26th, the Blaze chased down 151 against the Thunder. Catherine Bryce, would have to give a shout out to her.
Yes.
61 of 51. And then, as I say, more games going on as we speak. So I'm sure we will chat about them once the next rounds have been.
Yes, indeed. And we'll try and also do, she doesn't know about it yet, but we'll try and do a Catherine Bryce special as well, talk about Scotland's qualification for the T20 World Cup in October. Huge congratulations then. But we can do whatever we like. We are relaunched. We are back. The Daggers and Lyds podcast. So just a reminder, do subscribe. Hit the subscribe button which is somewhere down below me on your podcast or YouTube. And if you've got any contributions to make, please feel free to do so at Lydia Greenway on X and at Charles Dagnall on X. And we'll also be on TikTok and other things as well that those kids use. We're getting down with the kids. So thanks for your company. We look forward to your company next time.